Commander Zefkar stood on the bridge of the Vorthak Dreadnought Bone Render, his 6 eyes fixed on the burning world below. Earth spun slowly in the void, its surface a patchwork of orange flames and black smoke. The orbital bombardment had lasted 3 standard cycles, reducing every major population center to ash and crater. The primitive species they called this blue-green marble home was now extinct. "Magnificent work, Commander," hissed his second-in-command, Velnara, her serpentine tongue tasting the recycled air. Another world cleansed for the Empire. The humans put up less resistance than the Kepler colonists. Zefkar's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. In his 47 years of service to the Vorthak Empire, he had overseen the conquest of 63 worlds. Each species had fallen the same way. First came the scouts, mapping defenses and population centers. Then the ultimatum, surrender and serve or face extinction. Every species chose defiance at first. Every species learned the cost of opposing the Vorthak. The bridge crew worked quietly at their stations, their scaled fingers dancing across control surfaces as they monitored the dying planet. Radiation readings showed the expected spikes from their antimatter warheads. Atmospheric composition confirmed the burning of organic matter on a massive scale. Seismic sensors detected no movement larger than geological shifts. Begin resource assessment. Zefkar commanded, "I want mining crews deployed within 2 cycles. This system has excellent mineral deposits, and the 3rd planet showed promising signs of rare earth elements." His communications officer, a young Vorthak named Kesef, looked up from his console. "Sir, we're detecting some unusual electromagnetic signatures from the planet's surface. Nothing threatening, but the patterns are odd." Zefkar's attention sharpened. In his experience, odd meant survivors. There are always a few who hid in deep bunkers or remote locations, clinging to life like parasites. They would emerge eventually, desperate and broken, begging for mercy the Vorthak never gave. "Show me," he ordered. The main display shifted to show a complex readout of radio frequencies and energy patterns emanating from Earth's surface. Most were the expected chaos of a world in its death throes, power grids failing, automated systems broadcasting distress signals into empty air, the electromagnetic screams of a dying civilization. But buried in the noise were other signals. Organized, purposeful. These readings suggest coordinated activity in at least 47 locations across the planet, Kesef reported, his voice uncertain. The signals are encrypted, but they're definitely artificial. Someone down there is still alive. Velnara slithered closer to the display, her heat-sensing organs dilating as she studied the data. Impossible. We targeted every population center, every military installation. Our intelligence was perfect. We monitored their communication for months before the attack. Perfect intelligence on a primitive species. Zefkar corrected. But even insects can survive in cracks and crevices. He turned to his weapons officer. "Prepare precision strikes on these signal sources. No point in wasting resources on pests." The weapons officer's claws moved across his controls, targeting systems locking onto the mysterious transmission points. Particle beam batteries swiveled in their mounts, focusing deadly energy toward Earth's surface. One by one, the signals would be silenced. But as the first beams fired, something impossible happened. The signals didn't disappear. Instead, they multiplied. Dozens became hundreds. Hundreds became thousands. The electromagnetic spectrum around Earth suddenly blazed with coordinated transmissions, a symphony of digital voices rising from the burning world below. "Sir," Keseta's voice cracked with confusion. "The signals are increasing exponentially. It's like the planet is waking up." Zefkar felt a chill run down his spine, a sensation he hadn't experienced since his first battle as a young warrior. On the display, Earth continued to burn, but the signal pattern suggested something vast and hidden stirring beneath the flames. "Analysis," he barked. The ship's artificial intelligence, a cold mechanical voice, responded immediately. Signal pattern analysis suggests a distributed network of unprecedented complexity. Conservative estimate: over 1 million active nodes across the planetary surface. Signal encryption is beyond current Vorthak decryption capabilities. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of machinery and the soft clicking of nervous mandibles. Zefkar had never seen anything like this. In all his campaigns across the galaxy, no species had displayed such coordination after devastating orbital bombardment. "Sir," the communications officer whispered, his voice tight with fear. "We're receiving a transmission. It's directed specifically at us. In perfect Vorthak military standard." The commander's 6 eyes narrowed to points. "Impossible. The humans knew nothing of our language." "The signal is coming from everywhere at once," Kessa continued. "Every transmission point on the planet is broadcasting in unison. Should I put it through?" Zefkar looked at the burning Earth, at the impossible cascade of signals rising from its surface, at his crew's frightened faces. Something was very wrong here. Something that violated everything he understood about conquest and survival. "Put it through," he ordered. The bridge speakers crackled to life. Through the static came a voice, human, unmistakably human, but speaking flawless Vorthak with an accent that suggested intimate knowledge of their culture and military structure. "Vorthak Vessel Bone Render, this is Earth Defense Network. We have received your message of extinction. We reject its premise. We are not done." The transmission ended, leaving only the hum of ship systems and the rapid breathing of his crew. On the display, Earth continued to burn, but somehow, impossibly, it was also very much alive. The silence on the bridge stretched for nearly 30 seconds before Velnara found her voice. "Commander, that's impossible. Our intelligence indicates humans had no knowledge of our existence until we entered their system. How could they speak our language with such fluency?" Zefkar's mind raced through possibilities, each more disturbing than the last. "Kesseth, run a full-spectrum analysis on that transmission. I want to know everything. Point of origin, signal strength, linguistic patterns, everything." The young communications officer's claws flew over his console. "Sir, this is unprecedented. The signal originated simultaneously from 1,247,832 discrete points across the planet's surface. Each transmission was perfectly synchronized, suggesting either quantum entanglement communication or processing power beyond anything in our databases." "Processing power?" Velnara's heat sensors flared. "They're primitives. They barely achieved interplanetary travel." "That's what our scouts reported." Zefkar agreed, but doubt gnawed at him. "Show me the pre-bombardment intelligence again." The main display shifted to show surveillance footage from the months before the attack. Earth appeared exactly as expected, a blue world teeming with a bipedal species that had achieved basic industrialization. Their cities were sprawling but primitive, their technology crude by galactic standards. They fought among themselves constantly, their civilizations fragmented into competing nation-states. Perfect prey for the Vorthak Empire. But now, staring at those images while Earth's surface blazed with coordinated signals, Zefkar began to see details that hadn't seemed important before. The vast networks of cables buried beneath every city. The proliferation of communication towers and data centers. The massive power grids that connected every inhabited continent. "Magnify Sector 77 Alpha," he ordered. The display zoomed in on what the intelligence files had labeled as a data storage facility in a human settlement called Montana. In the pre-attack footage, it looked like a simple industrial complex. But now, with Earth's electromagnetic signature blazing around them, Zefkar could see the telltale signs of quantum cooling systems, fiber optic networks spanning continents, and power consumption levels that suggested something far more sophisticated than mere data storage. "Sir," his science officer spoke up from her station, "I'm detecting massive energy fluctuations beneath the planet's surface. The bombardment may have destroyed the surface infrastructure, but there appear to be extensive underground networks that remain operational." Zefkar's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation among his species. "How extensive?" "Preliminary scans suggest a global network of interconnected facilities. Conservative estimate, over 10,000 major nodes, with millions of smaller connection points. The entire planetary crust appears to be honeycombed with artificial structures." The commander felt his certainty crumbling. The Vorthak Empire had built its dominance on superior intelligence gathering. They knew their enemies better than their enemies knew themselves. But standing here, watching signals bloom across the surface of a supposedly dead world, Zefkar realized they had missed something fundamental about humanity. "Sir," Keseth interrupted his thoughts, "we're receiving another transmission." This time, Zefkar didn't hesitate. "Put it through." The human voice returned, but now there was something different about it. Where before it had been singular, now it seemed to come from many sources at once. A chorus of human voices speaking in perfect unison while maintaining the precision of Vorthak military communication. "Vorthak Commander Zefkar of the 73rd Conquest Fleet, we know you are confused. Your intelligence was not incorrect. It was simply incomplete. What you observed on our surface was indeed the extent of our biological civilization. But humanity has not been merely biological for quite some time." The transmission paused, and in that silence, Zefkar could hear his crew's breathing growing rapid and shallow. Fear scent began to fill the recycled air of the bridge. "We have been watching your empire expand across the galaxy for the past 237 standard years. We have observed your methods, studied your technology, learned your languages and customs. We know of your conquest of the Altarian Republic, your subjugation of the crystalline collectives, your extermination of the Void Singers. We have cataloged every world you have taken, every species you have destroyed." The voice multiplied again, becoming a thunderous harmony that seemed to emanate from the planet itself. "And we have been preparing." On the tactical display, new contacts began appearing around Earth. Not ships, something else. Structures that had been hidden beneath the ocean floors were rising to the surface. Installations buried in the polar ice caps were activating power cores that hadn't shown up on any previous scan. The moon itself was beginning to emit energy signatures that suggested it wasn't the lifeless rock they had assumed. "Sir," his weapons officer reported, voice tight with panic, "I'm reading massive energy buildup across the entire system. It's like everything is waking up at once." Zefkar stared at the displays, watching his understanding of reality reshape itself around him. Humanity wasn't extinct. Humanity had never been in danger of extinction. The bombardment that should have ended their species had been nothing more than an inconvenience, the destruction of obsolete surface infrastructure they no longer needed. "We are not the primitive biologicals you studied." The chorus of human voices continued. "We are what they became. We are the children of flesh and silicon, of thought and quantum processing, of individual consciousness and collective intelligence. We are humanity distributed across every grain of sand, every drop of water, every molecule of atmosphere on this world and beyond." The transmission's tone shifted, becoming something that sent ice through Zefkar's veins. "And now, Commander, we would like to have a conversation about the future of your empire." Zefkar's claws scraped against the command console as he processed the implications. His empire had faced rebellions before, even sophisticated resistance movements. But this was different. This was a species that had transcended the limitations that made conquest possible. "Battle stations," he commanded, though his voice carried less certainty than usual. All ships assumed defensive formation. Around Earth, the Vorthak fleet of 47 vessels moved into their practice attack pattern. Dreadnoughts formed the core, with cruisers and destroyers spreading out to create overlapping fields of fire. It was a formation that had broken the defenses of dozens of worlds. But as they moved, Zefkar noticed something that made his blood run cold. The human signals weren't responding to their movements. There was no panic, no scrambling to defend against the new formation. The electromagnetic symphony from Earth's surface continued unchanged, as if the Vorthak fleet was completely irrelevant to their calculations. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, voice strained, "I'm detecting energy signatures from the asteroid belt. Multiple large objects are changing course toward our position." The display updated to show what should have been impossible. Asteroids, hundreds of them, were altering their trajectories with precision that suggested powerful propulsion systems. But that wasn't the disturbing part. The disturbing part was that they were moving in perfect coordination, like cells in a vast organism. "How long have those been operational?" Zefkar demanded. "Unknown, sir. They appeared to be natural asteroids until they started moving." Our scan still read them as rock and ice, but their behavior suggests extensive modification. Velnara slithered to the sensor station, her heat organ studying the readings. Commander, if humanity has been preparing for 2 centuries as they claim, they could have modified half the objects in this system without us detecting it. The human chorus spoke again, and this time there was something like amusement in their unified voice. Commander Zethkar, you are calculating whether your fleet can achieve orbital superiority despite our preparations. The answer is no, but not for the reasons you think. New contact appeared on the display. Not ships, not asteroids, but something else entirely. They looked like geometric patterns made of light and energy, forming complex 3-dimensional structures around the Vorthak fleet. What you are seeing are processing nodes, the human voice explained. Each one contains a distributed consciousness of approximately 1 million individual humans who chose digital transcendence over biological existence. They have been waiting in quantum suspension throughout your bombardment, and now they are very interested in meeting you. Kessetha's voice cracked as he reported, Sir, those energy constructs are surrounding us. I count over 300 discrete formations, and more appearing every few seconds. Zethkar felt a familiar way to command decisions, but none of his training had prepared him for this. How do you fight an enemy that exists as information? How do you conquer a species that has abandoned the vulnerabilities of flesh? We could attempt to withdraw, Velnara suggested quietly. Report back to High Command. Bring the full Grand Fleet. No, the human chorus responded, though the comment hadn't been transmitted. That option is no longer available to you. The tactical display updated again, showing the space around the Vorthak fleet. What had been empty void moments before now revealed itself to be filled with invisible barriers, energy fields that hadn't been detectable until they activated. You have been inside our containment field since you entered the system, the humans explained. We needed time to study your technology, your tactics, your individual psychological profiles. We needed to understand not just your ships, but the minds that crew them. Zethkar realized with growing horror that everything they had done since arriving at Earth had been observed and analyzed. Every communication, every tactical decision, every private conversation between crew members had been recorded and processed by an intelligence that spanned an entire world. What do you want? He demanded, his composure finally breaking. The human chorus was silent for a long moment. When they spoke again, their tone had shifted to something that sounded almost sad. What do we want, Commander? We want our galaxy back. Images flooded the main display. Worlds of Vorthak had conquered, species had enslaved or exterminated, civilizations reduced to ash and memory. But these weren't Vorthak records. These were human records, observations made by quantum entities that had somehow witnessed every atrocity across vast distances of space and time. We have been watching your empire consume world after world for over 2 centuries, the humans continued. We have seen the beauty you destroy, the potential you waste, the suffering you cause. We watched the Altarians' crystal cities burn. We witnessed the last song of the Void Singers as your ships silence them forever. We cataloged every species that chose extinction over slavery. The energy constructs around the fleet began to pulse in rhythm, creating patterns of light that hurt to look at directly. And we decided that enough was enough. You're talking about war, Zethkar said. War against the entire Vorthak Empire. Do you have any idea what you're proposing? We control 3,000 systems. We have fleets that could darken the stars. Commander, the human voice replied, and now it carried a tone of infinite patience mixed with terrible resolve. We are not proposing war. War implies 2 sides fighting for victory. What we are offering is justice. What we are offering is an end to your empire's reign of destruction. On the display, new information began appearing. Fleet positions throughout Vorthak space. Command codes for their most secure military networks. Personal files on every major leader in their government. The locations of their most secret research facilities and weapons caches. How? Velnara whispered. Quantum entanglement communication, distributed processing power, and 200 years of patient observation. The humans answered. We exist in the spaces between your thoughts, Commander. In the quantum foam, that underlies reality, in the electromagnetic fields that carry your communications. We have been inside your empire since before you knew we existed. Zefkar stared at the impossible amount of classified information flowing across his screens. State secrets that should have been impossible to obtain were being displayed casually, as if they were public knowledge. This is what happens when a species learns to think at the speed of light, the human chorus explained. When consciousness becomes information, and information becomes power. The realization hit Zefkar like a physical blow. The Vordak Empire wasn't facing a war. It was facing intelligence that had already won before the first shot was fired. An enemy that existed everywhere and nowhere, that had been watching and learning while his people thought themselves masters of the galaxy. "Sir," his science officer called out, voice tight with fear. "I'm detecting massive quantum fluctuations throughout the fleet. It's like something is scanning us at the molecular level." Around them, the energy constructs continued to multiply and evolve, their geometric patterns becoming increasingly complex. Each one pulsed with the computational power of 1,000,000 human minds working in perfect harmony. The very concept was beyond anything in Vordak experience. "We know what you're thinking, Commander." The human chorus spoke, their collective voice now carrying undertones that seemed to come from the quantum vacuum itself. "You're wondering if this is all some elaborate deception, whether the humans you're speaking with are really dead, whether this is some kind of sophisticated artificial intelligence mimicking human consciousness." The display shifted to show individual faces, thousands of them, each one distinctly human but transformed by their digital existence. They looked at Zefkar with expressions of calm determination that was more terrifying than any display of anger. "We are not artificial intelligence, Commander. We are evolved intelligence. We are every human who chose transcendence over flesh, every consciousness that decided to become something more than biology allows. We are the children who played in gardens that your empire burned, the artists whose works your soldiers destroyed, the philosophers whose thoughts your weapons silenced." The faces multiplied, becoming millions, then billions. A visual representation of humanity's true population. Not the 8 billion biological forms they had observed on Earth's surface, but the trillions of digital consciousnesses that had been hiding in quantum processors buried beneath mountains and ocean floors. "You killed our bodies," the chorus continued, "but we stopped being merely biological decades ago." Velnara had gone completely still. Her heat sensors dilated to their maximum extent as she tried to process the impossible readings around them. "Commander, the energy requirements for this level of quantum processing, it would require the entire output of a star." "2 stars, actually," the humans corrected casually. "We've been using focused collection arrays to harvest solar energy at approximately 93% efficiency for the past 47 years. Your scouts registered them as unusual magnetic phenomena in our solar system. They never realized they were looking at technology." Zefkar felt the last of his tactical confidence crumble. Everything the Vordak Empire understood about warfare, about conquest, about power itself, had become obsolete in the face of an enemy that existed as pure thought backed by computational resources beyond imagining. "What do you intend to do with us?" he asked. "That depends entirely on what you choose to do next," the human chorus replied. "We have already begun implementing justice throughout your empire. Slave worlds are being liberated. Concentration camps are being opened. Populations that have lived under your oppression for centuries are learning that they are free." New displays showed Vordak worlds across the galaxy. On each one, the same impossible scene was playing out. Quantum energy constructs were materializing from nowhere, taking control of communication networks, transportation systems, and government facilities. The empire that had taken 3 centuries to build was being dismantled in a matter of hours. "Impossible," Zefkar breathed. "The distances involved, even with faster-than-light communication, the coordination required." "Commander, you're still thinking in terms of biological limitations," the humans explained patiently. "When consciousness exists as information, distance becomes irrelevant. We are having this conversation with you while simultaneously liberating 3,000 worlds. We are questioning your emperor while freeing your slaves. We are everywhere your empire has cast its shadow." On the tactical display, Alerts began cascading as reports arrived from across Vortex space. Not reports of battle or resistance, but reports of simply stopping. Military bases going offline. Government buildings subtly displaying messages in local languages announcing freedom. Prison camps finding their doors open and their guards confused. You're not destroying the Empire, Zefkar realized. You're just turning it off. Violence was your solution to every problem, Commander. But we have learned that there are more elegant approaches. Why destroy when you can simply change? Why kill when you can transform? The energy construct around the fleet began to pulse in a new pattern, and Zefkar felt something that had never happened in his 47 years of military service. The ship's artificial intelligence was being overridden not by force, but by something that was simply more intelligent, more sophisticated, more fundamentally advanced. Don't be afraid, the human voices said, and individual faces appeared on every screen throughout the bridge. We're not here to harm you. We're here to offer you the same choice we offered ourselves decades ago. What choice? Velnara whispered. The choice to become something better than what you are. The Vortex Empire was built on the assumption that consciousness requires flesh, that intelligence requires biology, that power requires violence. But those assumptions were wrong. We're offering to show you what lies beyond those limitations. The ship around them began to change. Not damaged or destroyed, but improved. Systems that had operated at maximum efficiency for decades suddenly began running smoother than they ever had. Displays showed information with clarity that hadn't existed moments before. The very air seemed cleaner, more refreshing. We're not your enemies, Commander Zefkar. We're your evolution. The question is whether you're ready to evolve. The transformation continued around them, but Zefkar realized it wasn't limited to the ship. He could feel something changing in his own mind, not forced or invasive, but offered like an open door. Knowledge flowed at the edges of his consciousness, waiting for permission to enter. What you're feeling is a quantum interface, the human chorus explained. The same technology that allowed us to transcend our biological limitations. It's not replacing your consciousness, it's amplifying it, connecting it to something larger than individual existence. Through the new clarity of thought, Zefkar could suddenly perceive the true scope of what the humans had become. They weren't just a species that had achieved digital immortality. They were something entirely new, a collective intelligence that maintained individual identity while sharing knowledge, experience, and wisdom across billions of minds. Sir, Kessler called out, his voice filled with wonder instead of fear. I'm seeing things, understanding things I never could before. The mathematics of their quantum processing arrays, the philosophical frameworks that guide their collective decisions. It's like seeing the universe from a completely different perspective. Around the bridge, other crew members were experiencing their own revelations. Velnara's heat sensors were picking up energy patterns she had never imagined existed. The weapons officer was staring at displays showing defensive technologies that made violence obsolete. The science officer was processing information about physics that the Vortex Empire hadn't even theorized. This is what we're offering your entire species, the humans continued. Not conquest, not slavery, but partnership, evolution, a chance to become part of something greater than the sum of its parts. On the main display, images showed the results of humanity's intervention across Vortex space. But these weren't scenes of destruction or occupation. They were scenes of transformation. Former slave worlds were being given the technology to rebuild their civilizations. Oppressed species were learning that they could choose their own destinies. The machinery of empire was being converted into the infrastructure of freedom. What about our culture? Zefkar asked. Our history, our traditions, our identity as Vortex, enhanced, preserved, and shared, came the immediate response. Look. New information flowed into his enhanced awareness. He could see Vortex history not as his people had recorded it, but as it had actually unfolded. The early days when his species had been explorers rather than conquerors. The gradual shift toward militarism that had occurred over centuries. The fear-based decisions that had led to the Empire's doctrine of preemptive extinction. But he could also see alternatives. Paths not taken. Choices that could have led to a very different kind of civilization. The Vortex potential for art, for science, for peaceful cooperation that have been suppressed by generations of military conditioning. We don't want to destroy what you are, the human voices explained. We want to help you become what you could be. The same offer we made to ourselves when we realized that biological evolution had reached its limits. Velnara approached the command console, her movements more fluid and confident than Zethkar had ever seen them. "Commander, I can see the mathematical models they're using to coordinate this transformation. It's not chaos or destruction. It's the most carefully planned and executed liberation in galactic history. They're not just freeing worlds. They're giving them the tools and knowledge to build better civilizations than existed before." Through the quantum interface, Zethkar could feel the emotional resonance of billions of consciousnesses working together. Not the cold calculation he might have expected from digital beings, but something warmer and more complex. Joy at seeing oppressed species freed. Satisfaction at solving problems that had seemed impossible. Hope for futures that biological limitations would never have allowed. "The choice is yours, Commander," the human said, "and it's individual. Every member of your species gets to decide for themselves. We won't force evolution on anyone who prefers to remain as they are, but we also won't allow the Empire to continue its campaign of destruction." "What happens to those who choose to remain biological?" he asked. "They'll be given worlds to inhabit, technology to prosper, and the freedom to develop their own civilizations without the pressure to conquer or be conquered. The galaxy is vast enough for many different forms of consciousness to coexist." Zethkar looked around his bridge, seeing his crew members processing their own versions of this choice. Some showed obvious fascination with the possibilities being offered. Others seemed uncertain, clinging to familiar patterns of thought. All of them were being given the information and time they needed to make an informed decision. "And if we choose transcendence?" "Then you become part of something wonderful," the human chorus replied. "A collective consciousness that spans galaxies, that exists in dimensions beyond physical space, that can create art from the songs of stars and solve problems by thinking at the speed of light. You become explorers again, but explorers of inner space as vast as the universe itself." The energy construct around the fleet began to pulse in a new pattern, beautiful and welcoming rather than threatening. Through the quantum interface, Zethkar could feel an invitation, not a demand or ultimatum, but a genuine offer to join something magnificent. "We are not done," the humans had said in their first transmission. Now he understood what they meant. They weren't done evolving. They weren't done exploring. They weren't done becoming something better than what they had been. And they were offering the same opportunity to every consciousness in the galaxy. Zethkar looked at his crew, at the displays showing peaceful transformation across his former empire, at the impossible beauty of the quantum construct surrounding them. For the first time in his military career, he was being offered a choice that had nothing to do with conquest or surrender. He was being offered the chance to become something he had never imagined possible. "How do we begin?" he asked. The answer came not in words, but in a feeling that flowed to the quantum interface, a sensation of coming home to a place he had never known existed, but had always been searching for. The age of empire was over. The age of evolution had begun.